Welcome to the Tales of Success podcast, a show about Labradors and achieving training success. Hello everyone, thanks for joining me again. In this episode, I'm joined by Sam Raggatt, who is the resident Labrador nutrition expert here at Tales of Success. And we're going to focus this episode on kibble or dry dog food for your Labradors. We're going to look at the pros and cons of kibble feeding, what makes a good kibble, and how to find out if the food that you're feeding your Labrador is really all it claims to be. We've also got a few questions that have come in from our Instagram followers, so Sam will be answering those as well. Sam, hello, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Pleasure as always. Let's start off. We always like to start these with talking about dogs. So you've got Mabel and Dennis. What have they been up to this week?
They've been having lots of fun because they've been going on walks together for the first time after Dennis's operation and recovery. So yeah, they've been having some crazy times together. So it's been really good.
Good. And just to explain walks together. So those that have listened before will have heard the episode that we did talking about Dennis and elbow dysplasia. So you've had some good news in relation to that this last week, haven't you?
Yes, really good news. So he started his Librela, must have been about 11 to 12 days ago now. It was a 50-50 chance as to whether it would work or not. And it appears that it has. So, you know, which is brilliant news. So it took us a couple of days to actually accept that it had worked, because we were there going, no, I'm sure he's limping. No. But it had worked pretty much from the day after. So that's great news. And he can now go off the lead twice a week, which is something he's never done. So yeah, you should have seen the smiles yesterday when we took them over to the fields by us, and he could run around with Mabel and they went in the brook and things. So yeah, it's just brilliant news.
Amazing. Can't wait to see him bouncing around in his happy self, because I bet he's probably loving his new lease of life, pain-free life now. So that's really good news. Part of that will be what the vets have done, but I'm guessing, you know, food plays a big part, and you're a big Labrador foodie in the sense that you know what works well for dogs, what helps them in recoveries and things like that. And I guess getting the right food has helped Dennis as well.
Yes, very much so. So the vet has looked over everything that we've been doing and all the supplements we've given him. And he has said that it's played like a huge part in his recovery. And that's why he is doing so well. So yeah, food plays such a big part in every dog's life, whether they are suffering an injury or just growing or just being their normal selves.
Yeah, perfect. And for those people that see dog food as just kind of something we have to do 2 or 3 times a day to keep our dogs functioning, there's way more to it than just filling a dog's tummy, isn't there? So why would you say it's so important to feed our dogs the right food? How is it going to help them with their everyday life?
Well, you know, but they're just like humans. So if we're putting bad food into them, we're only going to get bad results. Whereas if we put good food into them, then they're going to have really good physical health, really high energy levels. And I know a lot of people will be like, oh, my dog doesn't need any more energy levels, but actually they may have the wrong type of energy. So by giving them the right type of food, it will be the right type of energy. It will help them mentally and emotionally as well. So it will make sure that their well-being is exactly where it should be. And their behavior and their social understanding will be better as well. The amount of dogs I know that have changed their food and their behavior has got so much better. It's amazing. It is just like a human. If you fed them, processed food every single day, the same thing, it would have a bad effect. And it's the same with dogs.
Yeah, and I remember kind of when Smarties had all those additives in, people used to joke about, you wouldn't feed your kid loads of blue Smarties all the time. And sometimes we do that with our dogs, don't we? We almost feed them blue Smarties by giving them something that looks like every other dog food, but we don't really know what's in there. And so many nasties that can cause crazy behavior in dogs. So definitely getting it right helps as far as behavioral issues, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
There's loads of different food options out there. So we've got kibble, raw food, tin food, home cooked. But today I really want to look specifically at kibble or biscuits or dry food. in your opinion, what would you say are the biggest benefits of feeding a kibble-based diet to any dog?
Well, you've obviously got the cost. A lot of people can't afford really expensive raw diets and things like that. So kibble, that where there is such a range of there, you can get one that suits your financial situation. It is good for their teeth. There's a lot of choice on the market. It is a very convenient way of feeding your dog as well. So, if you are going out for the day or going on holiday, it's something easy that can be taken with you. And also, if you are leaving the dog at home in a kennel or with a pet sitter, a lot more of them will be a lot happier feeding kibble than they would be anything else. And it's also a great way to target different stages of their life as well. It takes the complexity away from yourself, and you can buy the right food targeted for your dog. So there's many pros of feeding your dog kibble.
I think for me, the biggest kind of benefit of kibble feeding, I kibble feed my 2 Labradors, is definitely convenience for me, because actually I know that it's very easy and quick to give them their food. And when I run out, it's easy for me to replace it. Most retailers sell kibble of some sort as well. So it's quite convenient in the sense you can always get hold of it quite easily. Whereas some of those other food types, so raw food or home cooked food, you've got to maybe be a little bit more prepared. So that, for me, that's the biggest winner for kibble. But everything that we think is good will also have a downside as well. And there will be downsides to feeding a kibble diet. So what, in your opinion, are the negatives of a kibble diet?
Well, with any kind of food, you're always going to have like top end food and then bottom end food. So you've really got to know and understand your kibble. So there's so much variety out there. So you really have to know what each ingredient is and what it means. A lot of them use fillers and binders and preservatives. They use quite low quality ingredients. There's a lot of advertising out there, which, makes you think you're giving your dog your best, but actually when you actually look at the ingredients and the nutritional value of them, you're really not. So you've really got to think about it and get the best possible kibble for your dog. So yeah, there's a minefield out there to make sure you avoid certain things.
Yeah, because some people will see kibble and go, right, I can get a 15-kilo sack of kibble for £80. But I can go to the supermarket and get the same kibble or a similar kibble for £12.
Yeah,
they're vastly different, right, with what's in there. So we shouldn't just assume that kibble is kibble, because the stuff that goes in it is different. And you mentioned about fillers and binders and things like that. So for someone that doesn't really know much about kibble and what goes in it, explain fillers and binders and why we need to be concerned about the makeup of that kibble.
So when you look on the back of your kibble packet, it will have a list of ingredients. So whatever ingredient is first, that is the main ingredient in there. So you may have bought, I don't know, say chicken and duck gravy flavored, but when you turn the bag over, the first ingredient may be rice. So they've used the majority of the ingredients as rice to fill it out. So that will help fill up your dog. So they will feel full. And I find that a lot with the cheaper brands. So they put these fillers in. You'll need to use a lot more kibble to get the same kind of nutrition out of it. So actually, it's not very cost effective. Yes, you may have only paid £12 a bag, but you may go through 2 bags a month, whereas you can get something a bit more expensive, but the quality of the ingredients in there is so much higher. You actually need to use less. So yeah, don't think, oh, it's a lot cheaper, so it's better, because it isn't always. And then you've also got to look at whether they use derivatives. This is one of my biggest pet hate derivatives. People will go, oh,
I'm just going to stop you there. So there's 2 things that you like talking about. One is dog poo and the other is derivatives in kibble. But that's because both are so important in the nutrition world, because you can tell a lot from what goes into your dog that comes out of them. And I guess potentially the two could be linked. So for someone that doesn't know what derivatives is, go into as much detail as you can with that, because I think people would be surprised.
Yes, so if you look on your packet and it says like a meat derivative, that basically means it can be any meat, any quality, any age, any part of the animal, and it will be used within that food. So, you know, it's a word that is used by pet companies so that they don't have to always use a certain standard or a certain type of ingredient. It gives them flexibility. So you may think you're buying chicken flavored, but if it says meat derivative on the back, it can be any meat of any standard, of any quality. So you really need to find something that doesn't have the word derivative on, that actually lists the meat or lists the ingredients in their purest form, because that is legally what they would then have to put into the food. Whereas if they use the word derivative, it literally can be anything at all.
And that's pretty scary when you think about it like that. You think you're feeding a prime chicken meal to your dog, and you might be 1 month, but the next month it could be a totally different makeup of that kibble. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So, you know, if you do have a dog with allergies or intolerances, you know, you could buy the same food for 3 months and they can be actually fine. And then the 4th month, they may start having all the signs again, and you'll be like, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, but actually it is still the food, because you just don't realize they're having something that they shouldn't be having. It's an absolute minefield when you do have a dog that has an intolerance.
Yeah, I've got one dog. He doesn't have intolerances as such, but he does have a very sensitive tummy. And we've noticed this on some kibbles that he's had throughout his life, that consistency thing. We'll go for months where everything's fine. And then as soon as we open a new bag of exactly the same food, we seem to have an issue with his tummy. And that's probably, you know, thinking back, that was probably a derivative issue, looking back at the particular brand we fed him then. So people will listen to this podcast and go, okay, this is all great information, but how do I know that I'm giving the right type of food to my dog? So I'm going to start off with your personal opinion. So as a Labrador owner and a nutritionist, in your personal opinion, who would you say are the standout winners for kibble? And why is that?
Well, I do really like Eden, and I do like Origin as well. If you look at the back of an Eden packet, it lists absolutely everything in its purest form. You know exactly what it is. There's no words that you'd have to Google to find out what it is, because it's all natural food. And that's why I like them so much, because there's nothing hidden. There's no chemicals in there. There's no preservatives in there. It is what it says on the packet. So that's what I would always say. Look for something like that. It's got a really high nutritional value to it. So you've got to look for the quality as well.
We always say, we get asked a lot, you know, can you recommend what we should feed to our Labrador? And I think it's always going to be slightly different for every dog, every situation, but also for every budget, because there is, you know, differences of what you can get for your budget. So I would always say to people to get the best quality food that you can afford, because that is a big consideration. So Sam, for people that have got differing budgets, but they still want to feed their dog the most amazing kibble that they can physically afford, where can they go to find out a bit more about the kibble that they're currently feeding, to see how good or bad it is, and maybe find something a little bit different? So there's a website, isn't there, that we recommend to people?
Yeah, so it's called All About Dog Food. If you go on there, there's 2 different ways you can look for food. So the first way is you can put the brand of food in that you actually have, and then it will come up with all the ingredients that's inside it and the actual nutritional value that it will have for your dog. It also color codes all the ingredients as well. So you want to avoid any food that has a red ingredient or an amber ingredient in it. But you can also, if you want to change your kibble, you can also put your dog's age in and weight and everything, and then it will also find you food, and it will do it in nutritional order. So then you can work out which one you can afford, because it will give you a rough guide of how much it would cost you each day. So yeah, it is a really good website. So, but just bear in mind, the bag initially may be more expensive to buy, but it will probably last you a lot longer than, say, one of the ones that are lower down the list that may only have like 21% health. You might have to use a lot more of that bag straight away rather than, you know.
It's interesting you say that, actually. I did have a conversation with a puppy owner not too long ago about the physical amount that they were having to feed their dog. I won't name the brand that they were using, but what I would say is it wouldn't be on our sort of top 5 of ones that we would recommend. And they just felt they were having to put so much food inside this dog to get it what it needed. It was physically unable to carry on eating. And that's because the quality of the kibble was just, it was pretty rubbish, to be honest. So we recommended they move to a higher quality kibble. Yes, it cost them more in the short term, but long term, it meant they had to feed a lot less. The puppy was a little bit happier because they weren't overwhelmed with food, and they were getting much better nutrients. So I just reiterate what Sam said. Don't look just at the actual cost to start with. Think about how long it's going to last you as well, because often the higher priced products can last longer, can't they?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the food that Mabel came on, her bowl was literally almost overflowing with the quantities that we had to put in. And then when we moved her across to the kibble that we chose, there wasn't half as much in there, but it's so much better quality that, you know, it's, you don't mind doing that, because, you know, you think, oh, it's a big payout, but it's not in the long run.
Yeah. I think every dog is unique. You know, when we train dogs, we always say this: we treat every dog as a unique individual, because they all have their own quirks, they're all special in their own ways, and they need different things. The same goes for food, right? We shouldn't just say to people, you need to feed your dog on Eden, Origin, WAG, whatever it might be. We would never say you've got to just feed that, because every dog is different, and one of your dogs has intolerances.
Yeah.
So other than looking at this website, is there anything else really that people should consider? You know, is it important to check the ingredients that are in there? Should people always go for chicken? Should people always go for beef? What do we need to think about sort of flavors of food?
Well, I mean, I change the main protein for my dogs quite a lot, because if they stick to the same protein, then, you know, they can then build up an allergy or an intolerance. So I'm not saying change the brand of food, but you can change the flavor of food. So then they get the different proteins. So at the moment, my 2 are on the fish cuisine with Eden. So it's mainly fish. Oh, that's why it's called fish cuisine. But then you can move it on to other flavors. So then you have a different protein in. So I do mix and match quite a bit, just so that they've got a variety of different proteins and different nutrition. So, I mean, you can buy the best kibble in the world, but you're always going to have to add little bits to it, like supplements. And, you know, I always add a bit of fresh fruit and veg to my dog's diet, just so you can get a wide variety of nutrition.
Perfect. And I said a little bit earlier on that I feed my dog's kibble. It works for me, it works for my dogs, particularly the one with a sensitive tummy. For transparency, you know, who do you use to feed your dogs? Do you use kibble? Do you use raw? Do you use home cooked? A bit of both? And who is your go-to brand for kibble or biscuit based food?
Yeah, so both of mine are on mainly kibble, so they're both on Eden. But I do a lot of home cooked as well, and they do have a little bit of raw in. So I do take a bit of every diet really and add it all together. But yeah, Eden is the one that I do recommend a lot, and both of mine use. So I wouldn't recommend something if I hadn't had experience with it. So, and they both really like Eden.
And looking at that All About Food, dog food website, Eden is actually right up there, isn't it? I'm just looking at the moment, so that's definitely got a green mark all around it. So that's a good one that would be recommended through that website as well. I want to just go on to some questions that we've had in, which I think will be relevant to a lot of people listening to this, actually. So I'm going to go through the questions that came in from our Instagram followers. And the first one is, can we recommend a particular food for puppies?
Well, Dennis actually had Eden Puppy, which was really, really good. So I would highly recommend that. I also recommend the Origin Puppy as well, because they're both really up there. So yeah, I just really Google it, really research it, and make sure that you're giving your dog the highest nutrition you possibly can, because as a puppy, that is the most important stage of their life. So you need to make sure that they've got high quality ingredients so that they've got the best chance of growing the best way and the healthiest way.
Okay, so check that All About Dog Food website, make sure that it fits your budget. And you've personally recommended Eden, that's what you fed Dennis on, and found great success there. So hopefully that helps for that question. And very similar question here, best kibble for adult Labradors.
Right, so yeah, so Mabel is on Eden. So yeah, that's actually worked out really well.
I'd just like to say at this point, this podcast is not sponsored by Eden. This is just purely on personal recommendation. That's why we're talking about Eden so much.
Yeah, so quite a lot of people know how poorly Mabel was when she was a puppy. It turned out that she had quite a nasty rice intolerance. So before we knew that, she actually went through quite a lot of different food brands. So I have tried quite a few. Eden is the one that we settled on because Mabel just went from strength to strength with that one. And like I said before, the clarity on the ingredients is what I really love about it. We know exactly what Mabel's having. So we know that there's no ingredient in there that she can't have, which, you know, is so valuable to us.
Great stuff. And again, a similar question to the other two, but this person wants to know when and how to transition from puppy to adult kibble.
So that's always based on each individual dog. So you need to look at it around 12 months old, when your dog you think is slowed down growing, is not growing anymore, and the energy levels do start to change slightly. So, you know, Dennis was probably around 10 to 11 months, whereas Mabel was a little bit older. So if you're staying with the same brand, you just need to buy the next stage up. You might slowly put a bit in, but it's not really that much of an issue transitioning. The only time is that it can be an issue is if you are changing brand of dog food. So then you would need to do a transition program where you slowly change the food over. You can't just stop one brand and then start the next one the next day. It will send their stomach into complete turmoil, and you'll certainly know about it both ends. And, you know, the poor dog will have so many tummy issues. It needs to be a slow process. A lot of people say it can be done in 7 days. I never recommend 7 days. It usually takes more like 10 to 14 days. Dogs with sensitive tummies, it may take a lot longer. So as you said earlier, I do love talking about poo. So I always recommend making sure that their poo is firm and healthy before you move on to the next level of the transition. There's no point moving on if they've still got a bit of loose poo. So yeah, watch their poo when you're transitioning.
And we have another question again about kibble. That's what we're talking about. But this person has a 15-week-old Labrador puppy, and that puppy's kibble is soaked in water. And that's what they were advised to do by the breeder. When should they stop soaking that kibble?
They may never stop. It depends on your dog. So the reason you soak it is it brings out the smells and the flavors as well. So it makes the dog want to eat it. And obviously it makes it a little bit softer. It's all about texture. Your dog may never like hard kibble. It may always want soft kibble. It may just stop one day, and that's absolutely fine. So if you do want to stop adding the water, what I would recommend is adding slightly less over time for shorter periods, so it doesn't actually have the time to soften, and see if they like it. If they don't, it may just be that they'll always have it. You don't always have to soak it in water. You can soak it in bone broth or goat's milk and things like that to give it a bit of variety. But some dogs may never like the texture of hard kibble.
And rather than just thinking, right, we need to transition away from kibble onto, I don't know, tinned food or something, it's okay to soak it, isn't it? It's absolutely fine. It's whatever works for you and your dog. It doesn't need to be a solid kibble. If you want soft, that's perfectly okay. It's not going to affect the goodness in that food.
No, not at all, no.
And I've got another question, less about food, but it relates quite well. And the person is asking, do you add oil to your kibble to make your dog's coat glossy? This person's vet has actually recommended corn oil. So do we need to add stuff? And is corn oil something that is naturally added to some kibbles? Is it beneficial, or would you recommend a different type of oil?
As I said earlier, you've always got to add certain things into any diet that you'd have, whether it be kibble or raw. You should always be adding in supplements and other things. So I add in flaxseed oil to my dogs, because dogs can't actually produce omega-3 and 6 themselves, so you do have to add that in to their diet. When it comes to corn oil, it will make them very glossy, it will make them very shiny, but the nutrition behind it would be very, very limited. Whereas if you added something in like the flaxseed oil or say salmon oil, there's a lot of nutritional benefit behind that as well. It helps with joints, it helps with digestion, it helps with brain function, and it will give them a shiny coat because they will be healthier, not just giving them a shiny coat. You know, you've got to think of what's inside as well as outside. Just because a dog has a shiny coat doesn't necessarily mean that what's going on inside is healthy. So personally, I would avoid corn oil.
Yeah, absolutely. We spoke earlier on actually about some brands putting lots of oil in their food to give that appearance of healthy coat.
Yeah.
Is that just to try and deceive us a little bit?
Yeah, it's a really good way of getting people to, you know, buy their food. I mean, you can talk to people and they'll go, oh yeah, I'm on such and such, look how glossy their coat is. And you're like, yeah, it's really nice and shiny, but you know, look at my dog's coat, it's really shiny, but I also know what's going on inside is really good as well. So yeah, it can be a sales tactic for some people. You know, if the nutrition isn't there, then, you know, they have to add things in to make their dog look healthy.
Yeah, so it looks good on the outside, not necessarily the best inside. Okay, really good things to think about there. Thank you very much for kind of the advice that you've given us today. And we've ended up speaking about Eden quite a lot, and that's not actually intentional, but that seems to be the common theme here. I know it's what you use and I've used as well. Is there anywhere where people can go to try Eden? I know you've got a link actually. Do you want to share that with us, just so people, if they want to try Eden, can check that out?
Yeah, I mean, they've got an amazing website. They've just changed it all, so there's a lot of information on there. So there's no hidden bits about it. So when you go onto their website, you can have a look at all the ingredients, how much is in each thing and everything. So it is a really good website. We do have a code of Dennis 10. We don't get anything for that, but it does save you some money as well. So yeah, if you do want to have a look at Eden and you want to try it, then definitely use the code Dennis 10, and I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Good, great stuff. Thank you so much. We've got more of these food and nutrition webinars planned in the near future with you, Sam, where we can talk about anything else food and nutrition related, whether it's raw food, supplements and stuff like that. We've already done one on supplements and additives, so you can check that out on one of the other episodes. And if you want to keep up to date with the other episodes that are coming out on food and nutrition, just make sure that you subscribe and also leave us a little review in the podcast store. And that means that you'll stay up to date with when they're released. And I will see you all again on the next episode, which will be next week. Thanks for joining us. We hope that has been useful to you. But from me, all I want to finish off by saying is be caring, be consistent, and be your Labrador's best teacher. I'll catch you on the next episode.